All right, well, thank you very much and welcome everyone. I really appreciate your patience. Let me get through a couple of computer problems, but I think we're good to go here. And today we're going to be chit-chatting a little bit on the EnGenius Voice Communications and specifically our newest product called the DuraFon Roam. And happy to answer your questions at the end of the presentation here and bring you up to speed on it. So let's get started. The DuraFon line, the EnGenius phones overall, but DuraFon line specifically, our claim to fame is range. If you're not aware of us, that's really where we excel. So at the end of this, I want you to remember we're a voice product designed for large environments where coverage is an issue, and these things can be anything from large warehouses and retail stores to assisted living, hotels, things like that. Just really large environments where range is what you're trying to achieve. We do offer two different brand families. The first is called DuraFon. This is an industrial voice. This is meant to be carried with you all day. It can withstand the bumps and bruises of being in a warehouse or a retail store. And then there's a carry-away line that's called Freestyle. And this is something that typically you'll find in hospitality. It may sit at a desk, and then periodically the user has to take the handset with them to deliver towels to the pool or something like that. So that's more of an office style phone, and the DuraFon is more that industrial feel kind of phone. So what is industrial cordless? Industrial cordless is long range. It's that durability, allows for premise mobility, and offers both phone and digital two-way radio communications. Comparing that to a carry-away communications, which is also long range, but it's generally taken with you, more of that office style. Obviously, give you premises mobility, and also has phone and two-way radio. So you can see the difference between these two categories is durability. When you're looking at what type of environment is customer in, and does this make sense? Which family would I go into, DuraFon or the Freestyle? So I said that our claim to fame is long range. So what do I mean by long range? How long is long range? Well, I'm going to talk about actually three different environments and compare the different brand families and our newest one, the DuraFon Roam, to these environments. So let me start with the Freestyle. The Freestyle in a semi-open environment like a retail store or warehouse, you're looking at about 100,000 square feet. Just to give you perspective, it's just probably just slightly under maybe a Home Depot or something like that. So it's really still a massive amount of coverage. In that semi-open environment, you're looking at about 100,000 square feet. In the DuraFon line, you'd be going up to about 250,000 square feet. So, one and a half, two Home Depots. And with the DuraFon Roam, you're looking up to 1,000,000 square feet with its added base units. So just phenomenal amounts of coverage, a Boeing manufacturing plant. If I were to take those same phones and use them in a hotel, assisted living, office building kind of environment, so picture a bunch of rooms, floors, things like that, then the coverage is as follows. For the Freestyle, you're looking about 25,000 square feet. And for the DuraFon line, typically about 50,000 square feet. And the Roam, again, about 200,000 square feet. So you can see the Roam really is excelling in all these different environments. And if I look at a wide open area like a farm or ranch, picture something, no real trees or buildings around. Then with the freestyle, we'll go with about 10 acres of coverage. So really good for large properties that may have an outbuilding or something like that. And the DuraFon, about 3,000 acres of coverage. And that would be for both the DuraFon Roam and the DuraFon. And this is outdoor coverage. And we'll get into how do you achieve outdoor coverage a little bit later. So that's what I mean by long range. It's all these different environments and the performance of the different brand families. All right, so where do we typically find ourselves? Now, just so you're aware of us, we've been doing long range voice communications for in excess of 20 years. And we are in lots of different environments, but I picked out a few of them just so you can get a sense of, okay, where would this fit? Well, assisted living is a major vertical market for us. So that's senior living application, and hotels and motels makes a ton of sense, and office buildings and retail stores and restaurants, service companies, like Goodyear Tire Center, things like that, and warehouses and manufacturing plants. Now, I did also pick a picture. This is actually one of our customers on the left-hand side there of your screen. You can see that she's feeding a tiger. She has a wildlife sanctuary, and you can see right next to her pistol, she has a Duraphone. So it was a very unique application for it, but that outdoor coverage where she keeps all her wild cats and takes care of them as they're rescued. All right, I wanted to talk about our range versus some other technologies, some additional frequencies. So the EnGenius products, this doesn't matter whether it's the DuraFon line or the Freestyle line, is operates the wireless side at 900 megahertz. And we do pack a punch behind it. So we have high power and this low frequency. That's really what's allowing us to get this kind of long range. Compared to some of the other voice technologies, one of which is DEC. DEC operates at 1.9 gigahertz, so it's a lot higher frequency. And that typically, all else being equal, is going to mean that you're going to get less coverage than you would off something at 900 megahertz. Now, the DEC phones also have put out roughly 200 to 300 milliwatts of output power, and we're putting out about 1 watt, so 1,000 milliwatts of output power. So we pack a bigger punch behind our low frequency versus something like DEC. And that's why with DEC phones, you'll typically put in additional base units and repeaters to expand that coverage. So a little bit more infrastructure there. So we can do that with minimal infrastructure because of the low frequency and high power. But how does this compare to a Wi-Fi phone? So if you looked at again, our 900 megahertz high power compared to Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi is 2.45 gig. So it's even higher than DEC as far as the frequency, so less range, all else being equal. And their power is also right around 200 to 300 milliwatts of power. So you have to be kind of close to an access point to be able to get coverage. And remember, with Wi-Fi, there is a lot of competition for that bandwidth. And that's one of the reasons we've chosen to stay at 900 megahertz is because we didn't want to add to the competition for Wi-Fi bandwidth. And many of you know us as a Wi-Fi company as well. So for our voice side, we didn't choose to add that to the Wi-Fi. We kept that at 900 megahertz so that all these other devices can be using that valuable Wi-Fi bandwidth. A new change for us in some of our models, and many of you may be familiar with the DuraFon Pro line. These are our analog-based phone systems. We have a 4-port DuraFon Pro base and a single port base, the PSL, Pro Single Line. Those are our Pro platform. These are the analog RJ11 jack, analog ports, and they can choose from a number of different handsets that work with either of these bases. And these bases can be mixed and matched as well as these handsets. So you have your traditional DuraFon Pro handset. You also have a DuraFon UHF handset, and I'll come back to that here in just a second, and a DuraWalkie handset. So let me start with the DuraWalkie. DuraWalkie is just a digital two-way radio handset that works with any of these other handsets, but it doesn't get phone calls directly. Although, unlike other two-way radios that are on the market, the DuraWalkie works at 900 megahertz. And if a full-featured phone, DuraFon Pro or UHF, gets a call, it can transfer the call to the DuraWalkie. So in that case, it could get a phone call. And then lastly, I really quickly wanted to talk about the DuraFon UHF. That's a dual mode radio in that it has two radios built into it. It has the 900 megahertz frequency radio in it and does everything the DuraFon Pro handset does. But with the second radio, that operates at the licensed UHF frequency. And so it means it can work with any analog UHF phone or two-way radio that's out there. So Motorola, Kenwood, ICOM. This would allow managers, supervisors to carry one device and communicate with their employees that may be running around with analog UHF radios, but still be able to take a phone call or make a phone call if they had to. And now let's switch into the SIP side as we lead into the DuraFon Roam equipment. So we also have a DuraFon SIP. The DuraFon SIP is a rugged handset. It uses the SIP protocol, still 900 megahertz. You can have up to 10 handsets with 4 concurrent calls. So it's great for an environment where you have really under 10 users. And this would give them that long range that we talked about earlier because it's still 900 megahertz and it still packs that punch behind it. And now let's go into the DuraFon Roam. I know that a lot of you are maybe familiar with things we just talked about, but this is the newest one that's just been released here about a few weeks ago. And where does it fit, and how do we get that kind of crazy range we talked about? So the DuraFon Roam is a long-range SIP system. And it's our first model that can do handoff between base units. So all the other models we had really were based on a single base getting this tremendous coverage. Well, this one allows you to do handoff between multiple bases, up to 8 bases, and also give you remote access to do things like manage or monitor or update the system without having to roll a truck. So with the DuraFon Roam platform, these are the components. There is a base station controller, which is the DuraFon Roam BSC, base station controller. And that's really the brains behind the system. It's going to handle that call handoff between the base units and get you RSSI readings, things like that. The base units kind of look like access points now. They do have a external antenna attached to them, but they're really designed so they can be easily wall or ceiling mounted. And this is your antenna. So this is where you're going to put these different base units in different areas in the network. And then you have the handsets. The full featured handset is called the DuraFon Roam HC. And then there is a DuraFon Roam walkie. This is our digital two-way radio handset that works with the DuraFon Roam system. So these are the four components that can make up the DuraFon Roam. You can have up to 90 handsets. It can be a mix and match between the full-featured handset and the walkie. You can have up to 8 base units, but you only need one base station controller. Now, probably the most overlooked thing is, where do I get at some of the key information? If you were to visit ingeniustech.com, all of our product pages have this resource section near the top of the page. And in this resource section, you're going to find things like the data sheet and the user's manual and a quick reference guide. With the Roam, you're also going to find some videos on setting up the Roam, as well as some PDFs. So whether you just need a piece of paper and want to, kind of go through it and get this set up, or if you want to watch a video and see how that was set up, those kind of resources are right here in that resource section of our product pages, and it'll be for the DuraFon Roam, DuraFon SIP, as well as the other models. So the newest capability is this handoff between base units. So unlike our others, which gave you that, let's take a warehouse, that 250,000 square foot coverage on a single base, this I can add up to 8 bases and get, 1,000,000 square feet of coverage in that kind of environment. And I can walk in between bases and get out of range of one base, but in range of the next base, and my call will be handed off to that next base, and that can continue throughout all 8 bases. And so it allows us for the first time to be able to take a handset and move anywhere within this facility. And even if I'm on a call, I can make and receive a call from anywhere, and I can stay on that call as I move about the facility. And you'll find that that ability not only applies to, large places like a manufacturing plant or a warehouse, but if you think about hotels, assisted living, things like that, this is a great opportunity because you're changing floors, you may have an outdoor area that you want covered, and gives you that flexibility. So again, base station controller supports up to 8 base units. You can have up to 90 handsets, mix and match, and you can have up to 8 base units, and you have 4 talk paths per base. So you could have 32 concurrent calls going on at any one time. And you're not registered to a particular base, so you're able to share any number of those 8 bases and those 32 talk paths. But you do have the flexibility of restricting that if that's what you need to do. Just to give you a sense on that base station controller on its size, here it is next to a pack of cards. It is really not that much bigger than a pack of cards. This has the the LAN port, and this can be run PoE. It has the ability to reset. You could have DC power added to it. It also has a slot for micro SD card, so you can store some information. The base station controller is also magnetic, so that allows you to attach it to a switch or a rack, anything that, and it will just stay put. So that's a really nice feature. The base unit itself comes with an AC adapter, but it also could be run off PoE. So you have your choice there. And this gets hooked up into the network. So unlike our standard analog base where there's just RJ11 jacks, this has the RJ45 Ethernet cable, gets plugged in and connected to the network. You'll notice that we also have a PSTN line capable on each of the bases. So if you did need a backup and you wanted to run an analog line to that, or if you had a call box hooked up and you wanted to the receiving area base to be able to ring the handsets off that analog call box, you could run the an RJ11 regular phone line to this base directly. And then, of course, you have the register button and the reset button, the ground, all on the back of the base here. But the thing that's neat about this is the external antenna is still available with this, so that you have the antenna that you can position whether you have this base mounted on a wall or if you have this base mounted on the ceiling. You can move that antenna to get that coverage that you need, whether it's vertical or horizontal. And that antenna, just like the antennas on our other bases, is a reverse thread antenna. So don't get your wrench out. It's just finger tightened, finger loosened. And you could remove it and you could put in an outdoor antenna or an indoor antenna or a splitter. So it allows you that flexibility still to get down halls or around obstacles. Even if you're mounting this base in this particular area, you still get the flexibility of using one of the other antenna kits. Now, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit on the base unit antenna and its position. So if you did have the base unit mounted on the ceiling and you wanted coverage that was horizontal coverage, then you would point that antenna down towards the ground from the ceiling. And that's going to give you that long donut versus the other way, which would go up and down. So if you wanted to cover up and down floors, then you would put the antenna next to the base if it was ceiling mounted. And the base unit itself, like I said, you could have up to 8 bases. You do need the base station controller. You just need one of those. And you could plug this into a PoE switch and power both of those units up with that. And remember, you can still add a PSTN line to each of the bases if you wanted to. Now, because this is a little different, we do have this ability to do remote access. So via the EnGenius Cloud, you can get at the DuraFon Roam equipment that's set up. And you're going to come into, after you register and set this up, you'll be able to come into the DuraFon Roam GUI. And this is the dashboard. It's one of the beginning pages here. So the dashboard allows you to see how many bases there are. And you can see that on the left-hand side, what's connected to it. You can see if there's VoIP only connected to it, or both VoIP and FXO connected to the base. You can see the status of the bases. You can see the handsets and the status of those handsets, whether they're on a call, they're ringing, they're free, they're unavailable, whatever that may be. So it gives you a really good overview of what's going on with the system. You can also go into the RSSI reading from this same dashboard. Just go over a few tabs and you have a couple of different ways to look at this. You can look at this bar chart. That's going to give you the bars showing excellent, normal, or weak signal. But it also, if you hover over it, it's going to give you the traditional digital readout, minus 33 dBm or minus 40 dBm, whatever that dB reading is, so that it gives you a good sense on that placement of bases and how they're performing. You can look at calls. So if you have calls going on, you can see what base is handling which calls. And if there's even a broadcast taking place through the bases, you can look at that from the base perspective. You can also look at that from a handset perspective and see, okay, which handset's in operation, who are they calling? And so this is also a really good view on troubleshooting things is that you can get right at this section in the dashboard again, from that overview, RSSI to calls. So some of the things that you can set that are a little different from our earlier products, you can turn on the bases to handle broadcast through the base. This is done in the base settings tab. If you go down that menu on the left-hand side, near the very bottom, there's a base settings tab. And if you go over to broadcast, you can enable bases to be able to take a broadcast and handle broadcast through those bases. Obviously, just like being able to make a phone call through the bases, you put the base in a really good area so that you have the best coverage. If you have two-way radio only handset to handset, then you may not be getting the best coverage because the handsets are low, obviously, and they may be beyond the typical range. You know, the base is generally centrally located. By enabling broadcast through the base, you get all the benefit of using that base to do that two-way radio broadcast. And you can pick and choose which bases you want to enable. You can also set up the firmware. This is in the Tools tab. So you can update firmware remotely. I can update firmware for the controller, the base units, even the handsets. And the handsets can be done wirelessly. And I can do this all from the GUI. And this is all done through accessing the base station controller via the EnGenius cloud. And if you read across the top there, you can see that I can back up and restore. I can reset, reboot. I can upload a phone book and even get an email notification if there's new firmware or whatever. So what is the MSRP on these things? The base station controller is about $300, $299.99 for the base station controller. You need just one for any deployment. Handsets remain at $399.99, and the base unit is also remains the same, $1199.99. So these are the three of those components that you need for the base station or for the DuraFon Roam, and get you a sense of the price points here. Accessories. Some of the accessories do remain the same from our other models. So the charging cradle is the same. The handset will fit right in there. There's a spare battery slot. The headsets are the same. Belt clips are the same. The pouches are the same. Batteries are the same. So all of those are the same with any of the other DuraFon Pro handsets and systems that you may already have or be familiar with. The antennas, the outdoor antenna, the indoor antenna, antenna splitters, lightning protection kits, those are all the same. So same ones that you may be familiar with, same reverse thread connector on the base and these connectors on the antennas. So I want to now give you a chance to ask any questions you may have. And I know we have 5 or 10 minutes. So if you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thanks, Doug. There was a question that came through in the very beginning of the presentation, and they asked, are they interchangeable? Not sure if you need more clarification or you understand.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume between the Pro and the Roam and the SIP and all these, typically not. Now, if it was talking about the DuraFon Pro platform, where the PSL and the Pro and the UHF and the Pro handset and the DuraWalkie handset, those are all interchangeable. So that Pro platform all can be mixed and matched and be any which one can work with the others. For the DuraFon SIP, that's a standalone. So nothing else works with the DuraFon SIP. For the Freestyle is standalone, but both Freestyle models, the Freestyle 1, Freestyle 2, are interchangeable, but those are single analog line models. So usually have, you pick one and then you could mix and match handsets if you chose to. For the Roam, separate platform, so all the Roam stuff is interchangeable. Obviously, the bases are the same. The handsets, the DuraFon Roam handset and the DuraFon Roam walkie can be used in the same system, but those will not work with the Pro, the analog stuff. So hopefully that helped answer those questions.
Great, thank you. Is there a fee for DuraFon Roam at remote access via the EnGenius Cloud?
Yeah, so with the DuraFon Roam cloud access, there's no fee for that. So there isn't a monthly charge or anything like that. You just can set up a EnGenius Cloud account, and then you're going to have access to the DuraFon Roam, and no fees.
Great. Can the EnGenius internal antenna still be used with a DuraFon Roam?
Yeah, so the all of those antennas, whether it's the handset antennas, and if you're familiar with our systems, and I'll use the Pro because it's been out longer, those Duraphone antennas, there's a stubby one and a taller one. Those are the same ones that would be used on the Roam handsets. Now there is a different antenna for the Duraphone UHF. But if I take that one out of the mix, the DuraFon Pro antennas are the same handset as antennas as DuraFon Roam. The external antennas, the rubber duck antenna, you'll notice that on the DuraFon Roam, it is a white antenna because the base units are now white. But if push came to shove, you need to get that a black antenna on it, it would screw onto that base. It's the same reverse thread TNC connector on DuraFon Pro bases or the DuraFon Roam bases. And then the cradle itself is the same as well. So the Pro cradles would work with the Roam handsets. The outdoor antennas and indoor antennas, the coaxial cables, the same. So the same connectors would attach to the base. So yeah, those antennas are all the same with the DuraFon Pro.
Great, thank you. It looks like that's all the questions that have been asked, and I don't see anything else. Thank you, Doug, for the presentation and attendees for attending. A copy of this webinar will be emailed to everybody and will also be uploaded on our YouTube channel for future viewing. So again, thank you. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your StreetWave representative. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.